Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Educate 360. Welcome to today's webinar, The Changemaker, Become a Steward of Transformation Within Your Organization, presented by our awesome instructor for today, Dr. Susan Hydorn. We are in Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A portion after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today, and without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Susan.
Thank you so much, Mariella. We are going to talk about being a change maker. And the premise of this is that we all need to be change makers. We all need to help people through the change. We all need to help our own selves through the change. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today as we move forward. So a little bit more on that is we're going to talk about why project professionals, and it doesn't matter if you're a project manager, a business analyst, or anybody who need to become change makers. And then being able to also think about applying an agile approach to helping stakeholders through change. Normally we had this change manager or change manager, and they would, do all this plan. It was more of a waterfall approach, but we now have an agile approach, of course, and in our ever fast changing lives, that is really helpful. So we'll talk about that a bit. And we'll talk about little tips to help people overcome resistance. Maybe it's your own resistance, maybe other people have a little bit of resistance, and how to help them actually adopt new behaviors. So that's what we're going to cover in this next hour. So thinking about your change environment, as you know, and you probably have felt many times over again, Marielle and I were just talking about that as we were chit-chatting before it started, is that, there's just so much change that comes at us, new processes, products, and services. We're constantly, as an education provider, adding new courses, new certifications, certainly new certification products that will help students be able to pass the exam, new services. And I know that no matter what industry you're in, you're probably feeling it also. Maybe it's an upgrade in technology. Technologies are changing fast. Process improvement efforts. We used to have a process, maybe it worked, but can we streamline it, make it more efficient? So there's a lot of process improvement efforts in organizations. Maybe you're part of a reorg or a merger or acquisition. I know we're in the little sister company of Watermark Learning, who got purchased by Educate 360. And so we have 5 actually sister companies. So talk about mergers and acquisitions. We were acquired. And so that was a big change for us. And even though I usually am part of that change, I've done a lot of org change efforts in my life and worked on a lot of projects. And this, even though I always say I like change, this one was still a big change to how we did things. You're trying to merge different cultures together. New methodologies. People are just still trying, as long as Agile's been out, they're still trying to change the culture to Agile, move to a more Agile process and framework. So that's still in the mix. And then, of course, the cultures in the organization are shifting. So having to be able to move a lot faster than we used to talk about it. So what is a change maker? What are you talking about when you say change maker? Well, change makers include anyone, and it's most of us if we work on projects, introduce change into organization. So again, if we work on a process improvement project, new technology, whatever, and it's also not only introducing that change, but really ensuring that benefits and the value are achieved by that change. And so that's why it is so important for all of us to kind of pay attention to how people are adapting to the change, because if they don't adapt, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, we're not going to get that value. You're we all need to be skilled in helping those organizational processes become more efficient and then helping the stakeholders. A lot of times stakeholders are forgotten. We put a new product in, we put a new technology and we put a new process in and say, here you go. Have fun. I just realized I didn't have my camera on. Have fun and we'll see you later. And we don't realize that there's a whole journey, a whole process around change management for them as well. So the impact of change, every change brings, or every change initiative, every project that we work on brings change to people in the organization. You just change something that maybe a process that they used to do, technology they used to use, and now it's different. Different culture, different org structures. There's just a lot of change and usually more than one at a time. And that can lead to anxiety, confusion, from people who are not fully understanding, okay, why am I changing? What is this good for? How come I have to change? I get all you have to change, but I'm particularly happy where I'm at. And so how do we help people adapt to that change? Because if they don't, we're not going to get the value we thought out of anything, out of any project, because they're going to go back to their old habits again. And so it's about making sure that we deal with the people side of change. Just because we've implemented a new system or a new process doesn't mean everybody's come on board. And they can easily slip back into their old habits. So you might want to think about, gee, Susan, I'm a project manager, I'm a product owner, I'm a CSM, I'm a business analyst, whatever. It's not my job. That's why we have OCM experts. Yeah, I mean, it is nice to have org change managers who can help with the change, but my experience, and maybe this is your experience too, is that they don't have one for every project. So some of the big ones, certainly, enterprise-wide projects, they often have an org change manager, but not for everything. And so the thing is that any change initiative, any project we're doing is going to bring change to people, and we need to consider it as a facet of our lives because there's just not enough OCM people out there to help us with every single project that we're on. And so this is where we need, as project professionals, to add a little skill set to our repertoire, to our toolbox, and kind of help people go through that change. So some changes are too small, so they don't get assigned an OCM. Sometimes OCMs are only for enterprise-wide because you may think you don't need them on every one, and maybe you don't. But if we all help people go through the change, that's a lot better than not having anybody worry about the change. So how both the project and the change success really depends on how we help people through that change. And making people, all of us should be change agents. So what is the benefits? Of course, we get improved customer satisfaction, stakeholder satisfaction, because they understand what the project is about, the change initiative is about. They're more likely to adapt, get buy-in, certainly faster return on investment, because if they have their buy-in, then they will be willing to learn. If they're willing to learn, learning curve that usually dips when you learn something new because you're slower at it, will take off, and so we can get a faster return on investment, certainly smoother transitions, less risk for people to go in. And I know I have been, as an external consultant, worked on many change projects, and sometimes I was the third consultant in there trying to get them through this change. And so talking about reducing risk, if people would have paid attention to the people side of change to begin with, instead of, having three consultants in trying to help with this, they probably wouldn't have needed me. So less resistance to change, because if I understand the change, maybe it's not so bad. If I understand the impact that it is to me, maybe I won't be quite as resistant. And we're going to talk about resistance as we move forward. certainly higher success rate, better value, better outcomes, and a plus is sustainability. So here's the myth of change. The myth of change is saying, gee, you know what? If I explain to you what the problem is, and I paint this beautiful picture of the vision as we move to that future state, you're just going to want to go there, right? It's just like, well, you don't want to, it's not uncomfortable here, and this is some of the problems we have. But look over there. Isn't that grand and glorious? I mean, isn't it pretty over there? And let's just scoot you over there. Well, that never works. Why? Because they don't know what's in it for them. They don't know what's going to be changing. Oftentimes, they're just told to change. And people are motivated by different things and they need different information. And so, even if, as much as I paint this beautiful picture of where you're going to go, they're going to go, yeah, right, don't care. And so, we need to bring it down to earth to them. And so, we'll be talking about ways to do that. One of the things to note, and this is really important, is that when we do a project, doesn't matter if it's agile project or a waterfall project or anywhere in between, we have a space where we implement whatever that product or service or item is. And so that's the point. That's the change event. The change event is implementation day. And maybe we train them and maybe we do some other things. But that's just one point in time. Change is actually a journey. And so it's a journey where people have to be able to feel comfortable and safe to let go of their existing behaviors, existing attitudes, existing knowledge, and then discover and create new behaviors and attitudes to achieve that future state, in addition to sustaining them in order to get that value and that outcomes. So the event is just the event, the change happens. And because it is a journey, people go through it at also different times. And some will speed through resistance, some people won't. So the change event is just the change. So I'm going merrily on my way. I come to work. I know what I'm doing, status quo. I've done it so long, I can do it in my sleep, very comfortable. And then I can leave work. I don't have to worry about it. And all of a sudden a change happens. And that change could be the actual implementation of the product or service. That change event could say, oh, we're going to change. We're going to change our processes. Don't know what that looks like yet, but we're going to change our processes. Well, to any change, there's a resistance. We all resist change. And it could be, I might resist in 5 minutes going, whoa, 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 wait, what are we talking about? When did we do this? Maybe it's I need to know a little bit more about the change. Or maybe it's like, nobody asked me and I'm impacted by the change. And maybe it's going to be a longer resistance. And so resistance always happens. And this model, actually, just a little note on the model, it was developed by Virginia Satir and modified by George Davis. George Davis was an instructor. Virginia Satir was a therapist. And she said, this is kind of how people go through grief. Well, they go through the same process when they are doing any change, whether they elect the change that they're very excited, maybe they move across country, or whether the change is imposed upon them. And when the change is imposed upon them, that resistance even gets longer. So then, we have resistance. We don't know what the idea is. Why are we changing? What's in it for me, etc. And then there's going to be a point of letting go, going, okay, I guess I can't hold on any longer. And sometimes you're just given that. So one day, after my first position, I worked for a number of financial institutions, and we had a meeting with the CIO, and we were thinking that our boss was going to get let go, and it turned out the whole department was let go. So it was all of us being let go, and at first there's this denial going, oh my gosh, and then eventually when the security people come up and make you get your things out of your desk and escort you out. It kind of comes to more a little bit of reality going, oh, okay. And sometimes I was excited about it, going, oh, I have new opportunities. And others I'm going like, holy crap. I just, my husband and I had just 3 months before that signed our new mortgage for our new house, and I had two little kids, and I'm going, now how am I going to pay the bills? So as much as I would go back and forth into that chaos, I'd go, I'd have ups going, oh, this is really great. I know I'm going to find something better. And then downs like, oh, but I really like my team. And what if I never find a job ever again? I mean, you silly things you tell yourself. But some days I was up, some days I was down. It's like, oh, I'd be doing a lot of networking. And then finally somebody said, well, why don't you go into consulting? I don't know nothing about consulting. I don't know everything. It's like, you don't have to know everything in consult. I thought I did. But it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe that's not the right thing. I don't know. And so then I said, well, I'll try it out. And so finally I said, okay, maybe I need to see myself in a different light. And so then I actually did go into consulting, ended up there for 30 years. Um, but it took some practice, seeing myself as a consultant, building my tool set so that I could add value to the clients, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually get to the new status quo, and I was pretty comfortable with it. But that's like with any change. Even if you elect change, in this case, I didn't elect to be let go. It was more kind of a kick in the butt, going, you don't have a job tomorrow. But the fortunate part is they paid for a lot of consulting and support to find the new position, which was really helpful. And so you go through the personal change. You go through this change, whether you're getting a new process at work because you're comfortable with where you're at. And it's like, oh no, now I have to learn something new, or I have to use a new system, or I have to go somewhere else for information, or now I have to work with Bill. I'm not sure if I really like Bill. I mean, there's so many things that go on, but it is a journey. And we have to be able to help people go through that journey. And as I said, different people will go through that journey at different speeds. One is just your personal capacity for change. How much else is going on? We always think when we add change, it's like, well, you're only going on 3 changes in the company, but what about all the changes at home in your family? That could be a lot going on, or the organization could be up and upheaval. Our organization, we were bought 6 years ago, and we're changing all our technology because we keep absorbing more companies. And so every time it's a new technology. So we've had 3 HR systems and then numerous portals, learning portal. I mean, it's just every time it's like, oh, I just got used to this one. Now I got to get used to the other one. So there's just a lot of change going on. Positive or negative effects of the change is going to make a difference. It's like, yeah, I know you said last time this would be really great. I didn't see it. So I'm not trusting you to tell me about this new change, right? You've probably heard those. It's a group willingness. So it's not just me changing, it's my team changing. And does the team support everybody else? And then just the personal acceptance of the change. How do you go about change? Some people say, well, some people like change, some people don't. Maybe that's true. Generally, it's like people don't want to be changed. And it also is different than if you elect to change yourself. Like I'm going to move to California. I was just talking to a ex-colleague of mine, and she moved to California, loves it there. I'm in Minnesota, which is really pretty today. It's blue sky and things are popping, but sitting in the snowbank in January, it's not too fun. So she made that change, and it was, she chose that. But it was still not easy. It was still, her family's in another state, and she had to get used to things. It's a different culture in California than in Minnesota or anywhere else you go. Everybody just has regional cultures and local cultures, and just finding the grocery store and a new doctor. I mean, that's all change. But we go, you know what? We're going to just suck this up because we want this change. Now, in organizations, oftentimes we don't get that option. Hey, I never said wanted this change. Well, too bad. Somebody decided up above, we're going to make this change. So someone says kicking the butt makes you take 2 steps forward. Sometimes, yeah. So one of the things we need to look at is how do we help people go through change, where they want to be, and ensure that people actually adopt the change, not just say they will. And let me tell you, suck it up, buttercup does not work. And that's my friend always says, suck it up, buttercup. It's like going, yeah, well. So we have to think about, well, how can we help people through the change, whether they're excited about the change or not? Again, it's a journey. So we're going to look at just briefly the OCM framework. This is what OC managers, organizational change managers, bring. But what I want to point out, even though it looks like, oh, there's a plan, especially for people who are in Agile, it doesn't have to be that big. You just have to think about it. In Agile, they say there's still documentation, but you only do what makes sense. I'm going to put that Agile premise on here, only do what makes sense. But you do have to, these are kind of the key things that you absolutely have to do. You got to define the change. Whether you write it down or not is your choice, but you have to be articulate and tell the message consistently throughout the organization. So what is the change? Why are we changing? From what? What's the case of change? What made it? Our customers are demanding something. Our business partners, vendors are changing, so we have to keep up with them. Or our competitors are changing, or what's going? Regulations coming down the pike. I mean, we've got tons of stuff. But what is that change? What are we changing? What are the drivers driving that change? And from an organizational point of view and for a personal view. Assessing organizational readiness. We're going to talk about each of these in the slides coming up. Planning for the change. And again, it could be a one-page plan. Keep it simple, especially on small projects. You don't need to get that big. What do we need to do to implement it? And then most importantly, sustain, because we forget that part. So let's take a look at the first one. Is for people to accept the change, they need to know why. Why the change? What are we doing? Why do we have to do this? What is the pain that either exists today or will exist if we don't change? Like, oh, our company will go under. Oh, yeah, that's probably a little bit important if I want to keep my job. And then, why this path? Why do we need to change to that future state? Maybe there's better things. But they want to know the why. With the why, people can do amazing things, but it's not just telling them, this is just what we're going to do. It's about saying, hey, this is why we need it. And it needs to be on different levels. Organizational level, why does the organization need to change? Well, because we still want to be in business tomorrow. And then why do I need to change? I get all you can change. It's easier for you. I can tell myself, but why do I have to change? So then it's a number of levels when you're looking at the why the change from an organizational point of view, but then a personal point of view. What is in it for me? Oh, I can do my job faster. Oh, I only need to go to 2 sources of data versus 10 sources of data. I can get it done in 10 minutes what I used to take in 2 hours. Well, that's kind of cool. I'll have a little bit more time. You know what I mean? So you're trying to make it personal. Change is personal. Change is a journey. You also have to define the why from a personal perspective. Why do I have to change? So organizational readiness, is the organization ready to absorb another change? Or is it going to be the proverbial straw that broke a camel's back? Can they, number one, absorb another change? Or is there so much that we better just hold off a little bit? Okay. And most of the time the option isn't to hold off, but at least make people aware, those powers that be, those decision makers, that's like, do we really want to do this change now? Because this is going to be pretty tough for everybody, and that includes both cultural. Is the culture ready for this change? And is operations ready for the change, the operational part of the change? The other piece is, can we sustain the change? Once we start changing, how do we sustain it? How do we make sure people don't slide back into their old habits? You probably are all familiar with making a New Year's resolution. I've made plenty. They always say to change a habit takes about 30 days, I think research generally says, and it has consensus about. I think it takes more. I'm more on that. Maybe 90, 120, maybe 6 months. Yeah, because it just really, it takes a while because you slide back. I'm on vacation and all of a sudden I come back and I go, I kind of forgot that process. Well, I'm kind of going to do it the old way because that was faster for me anyway, and it's just so easy to get sucked back into the vortex because it's a habit. Our brains get in a rut that now with the change, we kind of try and get out of the rut. And it's so easy to get sucked back into that rut, into our old habits. And so that's why I said, can we sustain it? Do we have time to pay attention to people so they don't slide back and do silly things in our newly formed, really lean, simplified process now gets convoluted because everybody's doing their old stuff? Do we have time to realize the value? So we're going to put and introduce you kind of to an agile approach to change management. It doesn't have to be this big, like we used to do project plans, that thick. Or change plans are pretty big too. It shouldn't be that way. We should be adopting more of an agile approach. And agile, particularly if you do Scrum, the 3 pillars of empiricism: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So transparency, everybody knows what everybody's doing. Inspection, let's review and see how we did, and adapt as necessary based on the feedback from inspection. We take that component, that basic component, and say, okay, we know that change is a personal journey, and some people will go through it really fast, and some people will go through it slow. And the interesting thing is I actually use that model when I do work with my clients on change management, and people always go, oh, we're all in the same place, Susan, we're all in the same, but we don't need to talk about that. And I go, well, you sure? Everybody's like, oh, we're all in the same place, we're all in insight and vision, and we just need a little bit of practice. And so I said, okay, well, we're going to do this individually. And so if I'm in person, I'll do it on a flip chart. If not, I'll take a poll if I'm virtual. And I go, okay, tell me where you're at. Looking at that framework, where are you at? And let me tell you, guess what happens? Nobody is in the same place. Everybody's different. So did they slide? They might have slid back a little bit. Maybe there's some of them going forward. Depends on what day you ask them. And so what we're trying to do is say, how do we take the best of Agile? Because there's so much going on. So how do we maximize those principles plus the good change management principles into faster adoption? And so there are 5 guiding principles around agile change. Is first of all, recognizing a deadline. So there's going to be a deadline. Even in Scrum and Agile, there's a deadline, an ultimate deadline. You are not going to sprint yourself to oblivion for the next 10 years, right? There has to be a deadline. And it's like, this is it. And we're going to always focus on what we want, what we must have. Those things of most value will give us the most value. And then if we don't get to some things, we don't get to some things, right? So, but you still have the same thing. You have to have a deadline, and allowing the details to evolve. So we're going to do this in more increments, and saying, okay, what do we learn from this increment? What do we learn from this increment? Making sure that we change as we need to. We work collaboratively as a group. So this isn't a one person, oh, the OCM manager is going to, do all their magic and everybody's going to change. It's like, no, this is a group effort. The project team works on this. We bring in the stakeholders to help them help others through this. And so we're balancing, the time and the resources really across the change effort. There might be people who help us at the beginning of the project and other people that towards the end. So this is kind of the organizational change roadmap. And if any of you are interested in this, we have a Agile Change Agent certification class in this. So really great concepts. In fact, I just got done with teaching one yesterday. So this is a roadmap. This is so you need your ultimate deadline, Like I said, you're not going to iteration yourself to oblivion. You got to decide on when you're finally ending. And then you have your iterations. The first iteration is always around planning. What are we gonna plan? And then the next ones are the doing, right? You got your plan and your doing. This is like for you that do Agile Sprint Zero. And I know a lot of you say, no, Sprint Zero, no Sprint Zero. For purists, there's no Sprint Zero, but I don't care what you call it, you got a plan. Even in Agile, you have to have a little bit of plan. And so this is where that planning comes from. What is the case for the change? How are we going to manage ourselves? What's the ultimate goal? And so then the iterations rest are down there. And outcomes, what are the behavioral outcomes? What do you want to see? Oh, the people are now using the system, or they're using this increment of the system because we're also doing development in an agile world. So what are the behavioral changes? Maybe the first behavioral change, of course, is that people understand what the plan is. The second might be just understanding, we get everybody to understand why we have to change. And that's a behavior, that's an attitude. It's changing your attitudes and your behaviors. So these are those little outcomes. These are those behavioral outcomes. What changed in your thinking or your personal behaviors? And then we have processes under that. And so we have a change description. It might have a business case, communication plan, change plan. And then certainly identifying, like any other project, is you identify who's impacted by the change, making sure you get your suppliers, kind of like a SIPOX. You got your suppliers who provide the inputs, both internal and external, and you have internal and external customers that get the outputs. And we often forget those people, but their lives just changed. I was working on one project, wasn't thinking very well about who gets the outputs, and all of a sudden we implemented a project and someone's really unhappy because they used to get a report and now the report was garbage because we had changed the system, and we didn't. It was one of those things that they got this report once a month, nobody remembered it, and wasn't a happy camper. Why? Because we forgot them. So we had to make some quick adjustments. You're probably much better than that. So, but that was a mistake that I did. So, those that doing the work and are authorized to do the work, we pretty much know. We pretty much get them involved, but we forget the suppliers, forget the customers. So implementing the change, there can be a high risk as the change finally becomes a reality. It's like, oh crap, now now we have to do it, right? And again, the stakeholders could be at any point in the journey, and not everyone is going to be ready for it. Just because even the solution's implemented, they're going, well, I kind of like the old way of doing it. Maybe I'll see if I can kind of jury rig the thing and figure out how to deal with it. So we need to kind of think about that as we're implementing. Then that's where sustaining the change is so key that we have to do. And then being able to take actions, getting those benefits and making sure that we support those stakeholders as we implement the change. And as I said, sustaining the change, I'm going to say that most companies, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time, longer than I hate to admit, don't sustain the change. And I've been brought into organizations that change wasn't sustained and it just created havoc. So as you plan for the change, you're going to say, how are we going to make sure that all this training, all these new behaviors and new ideas stick and they don't go back? Just like when you made your New Year's resolution, you went to the gym, great, for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and then it's like, "Oh, I've got something else I gotta do. I'll just skip that day." And then I'll go, "Well, I didn't go that day. I'll start again next week." And pretty soon one thing leads to another, and we all know how that goes. So, how are we going to reinforce? Maybe it's rewards, maybe it's checking in on them every so often, seeing if they need coaching or mentoring, making sure that their supervisor or manager looks for things that might be going askew before it becomes a big issue. Leveraging other people, "Oh, Sally's really doing well, maybe she can coach others on that team." But what we wanna do is encourage people to embrace and transition to that new knowledge, that new behaviors, that new attitudes of work, the new ways of working. And then being able to, of course, monitor that. Because if we don't monitor it and we don't sustain it, we're not going to get the value. Pretty soon that simple process becomes convoluted. Pretty soon that new, and I've seen this happen too. We give them some new technology and they still use the old stuff, and sometimes it's just an old spreadsheet, but they're comfortable with it, sometimes you can take it away, but other times you can't. I've actually done funerals for people, and it's really not the funeral about the people, but it's a funeral around giving up the old technology because some people get really attached to it. So a couple of times I even did a eulogy and we did some tombstones saying, "Hey, you know what, you were a good ERP system, but we got to say goodbye," or whatever it was. So being able to say, how do we sustain it? And then maybe taking away things that they could want to use as their safety net, or being able to just continually monitor, encourage, reward people for that. You got to think about how you're going to sustain the change. And then overcoming resistance. Geez, nobody's ever resistant, right? Why do they become resistant? Well, because you just changed on how they work. So now they can't come in and be half asleep and do their job because you just changed it. Now they have to think. I'm being not saying that facetiously, but sometimes, then they've got to say, "Gee, it's a lot slower. I used to be able to do this in 10 minutes. Now it takes me a half hour." Why? Because they're still in the learning curve. You change what they care about. I was in one organization and we were putting in a big change. It was actually a 3-year effort. And they were upgrading their systems, and one of the things that when I was working with people and helping them through the change, and it's like, realizing how that they can cope through the change and what they can do. And they go, "Well, why should we believe you? They took away tea time. Why should we believe our executives? They took away tea time." And I'm going, "What is tea time? Tea time. You guys keep talking about tea time." I'm thinking like golf tea. It was tea, TEA, tea time. So they'd all at 3 o'clock. They were a large organization, almost 100 years old. But every day at 3 o'clock, they would all go to the cafeteria and have tea or soda or whatever, and kibitz with their friends for about 20 minutes and a half hour, and then they'd all go back to work. And then they realized, if we're going to grow, we gotta have people answering the phone for our customers. So they took that away, and they were still bumped. That was their sacred cow. They really liked that. That was a nice benefit, and all of a sudden now they can still take break. It wasn't that they couldn't take break, they just couldn't do it all at once. So, what they cared about, those sacred cows, their identity. Maybe they're now working with people they don't know and they're not comfortable with. Their values might have gotten interrupted. Maybe they value, some autonomy, and maybe we gave them less autonomy. If you can still give people some autonomy, some control over their little world, their little fiefdom right there, sometimes that's not a bad idea because, kind of hard to be out of control. Compensation, performance goals, we're asking them to change a lot. Maybe their job title, maybe their ranking. So when we talk about resistance and we're changing those, this is where we're at. And what we're trying to do is get people to let go faster so they can go faster through the journey, and then you get faster getting that value. So why do we resist? Fear of losing control. Okay, I'm going to raise my hand. That's really a big piece for me. I like my little control. It's probably more of a thought that I have control, a perception I have control over anything, but I like that perception. So it's, losing control, losing my identity. Maybe I was the super user and everybody came to me because I'd been using the system the longest, and now I'm just with the rest of the group, just trying to figure out what in the heck this does. Changes in our daily work, burnout, lack of vision. Nobody told I still don't get, why are we doing this change? I don't get it. What's the value around that? Latest oh yeah, this is I've heard that a lot. Oh yeah, this is the latest silver bullet, yeah, whatever. And this too shall pass. We'll just wait them out. Um, Identity, lack of understanding of why the heck we're doing this. We haven't managed resistance, little follow through, lack of alignment to the culture. If you're trying to change everything and the culture too, culture takes a long time to change. Culture is that everything that we do and don't think about. Culture is usually what you see. You go into some organizations and all their cubes will be decorated, and you go into other organizations, there's nothing out of place. I had this one boss who said she'd give us a sheet on how we had to have our desks when we left. Our pencils had to be here, our pens had to be here, our papers had to be here. Um, I didn't work for her very long because I don't like that much of micromanaging, but what is in the culture? That's a little bit tricky, hard. So, people are sitting there thinking, I think I'm on board, but what does that mean? Well, great idea. You guys go ahead. But I kind of like what I'm doing. How will it look when I get there? It's like, okay, who am I going to work with? You got to answer that. How am I going to do my job? Well, instead of these 5 screens, you're going to go and use 2 of them now. What's in it for me? Everybody, we're egocentric creatures. As much as, we might not like to be, we are. And at the bottom of, end of the day, it's like, what's in it for me? I need to understand how it's going to impact me and what is the value to me. And like it or not, we have to address that. We have to address that. And yes, it's like what it's for the greater good. That's important too, but it's also, why do I have to change? Why is this change necessary? And so to help people change, and this is a formula, it's been around for ages, but it's one that I still like because I think it's really not a formula per se, but you'll get the meaning of it. So the formula for change is dissatisfaction times the vision times for steps has to be, all those together have to be greater than resistance. So what's dissatisfaction? Dissatisfaction with the current state. What is the pain in the current state? What is the frustration in the current state? So we have to understand that. So that's the D, how dissatisfied, frustrated, what's the pain? A vision, where am I going to? I need to understand that as well. It's like, yeah, it's kind of painful. It's kind of awkward. It does take me a long time. I'll agree with that. Now, what am I going to? How do I know I'm not going to the same problems? How do I know that it's going to be a lot easier? How do I? So we need to have that vision of how that future state addresses dissatisfaction. And then the first steps, how are we going to help people get there? Because it's just like, okay, I'm at the current state and we have the future state, and there's a whole canyon that I have to jump, and I'm not very good at jumping. So how am I going to get to that future state, you say? So we have to help people figure out what are those steps to get to that vision. All of those together, and that's a lot, all of those together have to be greater than resistance. So dissatisfaction, we need to create a burning platform. The reason of the change. Well, if we don't do this, we'll be out of business. And I have had that actually. Or that our competitors are doing it. We need to keep up. Our customers are demanding it, or they'll go somewhere else. I mean, what is the reasons for the change? What are those change drivers? Or this is, new regulation came down the pike, or we're trying to implement something and streamline it to make your life easier, whatever it is, okay? The vision is what we're going towards. What is that compelling vision? How will I now do my job, and how will it help me do my job, and how does it take away the pain of the current state? And then first steps. Okay. How will I help reach that? Okay. So I have the current state, I have the future state, basically new routine, and oh, that's a big canyon I have to figure out how to get over. So how do I do that? So some of the things you can do to help people move to the first future state, of course, is really have good communication. A training. Now, make training appropriate. And again, if you do it from more of an agile perspective, you might do training in little increments. Okay, you're going to learn how to do, this. Now you're going to learn how to do this. Now you're going to learn how to do this, depending on when your releases are. But I've seen organizations go, yeah, we trained everyone. Yeah, that was 6 months ago. I'm lucky if I remembered what I had for breakfast today, let alone what 6 months ago. So you may have to make it pertinent. You have to make it focused to them on what they need. Cheat sheets are great. Practice labs, depending on how big it was, they could come in and we'd have a room set up, and that's harder virtually. So what do? You give them access to a practice group, so they can go in, they can play with it. I mean, they've done that sometimes too. If you're in a virtual world instead of a come to the office world, let them have a temporary password and login information and just play around with it, so they get used to it. Coaching, certainly identify those coaching, leadership, modeling. So make sure your supervisors, your managers are on board and they're modeling the behavior. Because if they say, well, gee, I think this change sucks too, well, nobody's going to follow them. It's like, well, they don't like it. It's kind of like that old cereal. Well, Mikey doesn't like it. Why am I have to like it, right? Actually, Sally said incremental phased versus the that fall on the head stuff, yeah, approach to training, yeah. So rewards, recognitions, weave something in that if you can. How can you, if nothing else, just recognition. Hey, Bill has been doing this for a month and he's got it, I mean, just something so that they see progress. That's another thing, and that's not on here, but if you can show progress so that they can't go, well, this is just a way, I can't do this, I'm out of here. I mean, we're just sliding backwards, you just say, okay, here we are and here we are. Maybe we just did it by department. Maybe we did it by little increments, but show success. So pretty soon they go, wow, that's way back there. I can't go back there. I guess I can only go forward. Short-term wins, just figuring out how to get people excited and moving forward, and whatever that takes and is needed. Certainly we have to build relationships through all of this. Is one, we have to understand ourselves and how we feel about change, how we like communication, what we need, because what we need is maybe not necessarily the same as they need. So this is where we need to listen. It's like, oh yeah, Bill's complaining again. Ugh. Well, maybe Bill has some good points and we need to really listen. It's that active listening. And if nothing else, sometimes people just need to get it off their chest and then they feel better and then they can kind of move on. But, being able to listen and realize that not everybody's, is like me, that they need different data needs, they communicate differently, they respond to change differently, and we don't know what else is going on in their personal lives. It's like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, Jen, but everybody else is getting the program. Well, maybe Jen has a ton of issues with her family life, and this is like, geez, this is just way too much. So giving them empathy, realizing, I had a um, trainer that said, well, we should assume good intentions of everyone. And I'm going, You're talking 100% of everyone? And goes, yeah, 100%. Everybody has good intentions. Like, okay, I'll buy 98, but I think 2% still have bad intentions. But anyway, that has served me well because people do have good intentions. They don't want to screw up. They don't want to make people miserable, and generally, oftentimes they don't know that they're doing it. But just sometimes we just gotta listen and let people have their emotions. We're emotional creatures. It kind of comes with the territory of being human. And people feel what they feel, and then how do we help them through that? So it's understanding ourselves to understand that others are not always wired like us, and how do we certainly build on that? So, 8 key mistakes to avoid. Number 1, not understanding the importance of people, and I'd almost say not listening either. Not appreciating that people are going to have different speeds through the personal process, the change process, different reactions, you know. Treating transformation as an event, but instead it's a mental, it's a physical, emotional process. It's not just an event. Okay, new process, see you later. That doesn't mean that we're all there yet. Not being transparent or truthful. Remember when I was talking about the silver bullet, and I actually had to come in after changes had gone wrong because people weren't truthful. Oh yeah, this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And then it's not. It's like, why would they believe you on the next change? Projects by nature, and all this is unique. So we don't know what we don't know. Right? So be truthful. Hey, you know what? That's a really good question, Bill, but I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I don't know. If I don't know, I might try and find out. But sometimes we might just have to let it happen before we can figure it out. Not setting the stage, understanding the whys of the change, allowing too complacency. It's like, well, you know, I'm just writing you out. This is another silver bullet. It'll go away in a little bit. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear you. Now, believing that communication happens. Now, sometimes we can get overboard in communication, but sometimes we think, well, the executives all pronounced this, did all the kickoff meeting or broadcast all the information, everybody understands it. Well, no, not everybody understands it in any communication. You pick up some pieces, you disregard the others. So it is a constant need to communicate the changes, communicate the progress, communicate how you're going to sustain the change. Communicate, and not understand the importance of buy-in. And again, this effort is not meant to just go, oh, gee, Susan, now I have to have one more thing on my plate. It's to share this effort with your project team. Use it as another plan. When you're planning your sprint, maybe just you can either separate it, or you can say, what are we going to do to help people through this change? Get some of the stakeholders involved. The more you get them involved, the better their buy-in. So that is pretty much it. Final thought: change really happens one person at a time, and you're not successful till you get everybody on board the ship. It also happens from the inside out, not the outside in. We can't force people to change. It just doesn't work. And you might do it in a little bit of time. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's on board, but in the end, it's not going to work. So, I'm going to open up for questions. Mariella, just let me know what questions I need to answer if you have any. If not, I know you're probably busy at work, so feel free to go. We do have some upcoming courses. The one I want to point out is the Agile Change Agent certification, which that was before. So I don't know why I didn't change that. I changed all the others. I didn't change that, but go to our website at watermarklearning.com. You will see the next upcoming date. I thought I had them all changed, but then when I was reconvening them, obviously I didn't. So I apologize for that. But it is a certification talking about just what I was talking about already. So it is. And let me just, since I am here, I'm just going to go really quick and see if I can give you the actual date.
Yeah, it's actually July 29th and the 30th, I
Thank
believe.
you.
Yeah, I got
You
you.
are awesome, Mariella.
I gotcha. Um, but yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Susan. Yeah, this was a lot of fantastic info, and I'll give our audience a little bit more time to throw in any last minute questions in the chat. But I know we had one right off the bat from a minute ago. Yeah, actually, it says here, how can I effectively showcase slash communicate personal changes slash improvements for a specific role across the hierarchy as it takes time to adapt? So I guess how can he
So if
track
you're talking
personal
about a new
changes?
role,
Maybe. You
is that what they're
wanna
talking about? I'm not sure I got all of it, but yeah, if you're trying to adopt change to new roles within the organization, um, I work a lot on getting buy-in, talking to people, letting them ask me questions, saying, "Hey, what do you think about this new role?" Always bringing people on board and asking them what they think really helps get buy-in, and just even listening to them. Maybe they don't get their way, but just listening to them also helps. So, um, and just be able to communicate and find the high influencers. So you don't have to influence everyone. You have can other people in the organization who are particularly your high influencers can help.
Excellent, excellent. We have another one here. What are some tips to introduce changes or suggestions to changes? I'm assuming maybe like to management or how some tips they can introduce some changes in their role.
To introduce change, usually I'll usually have some type of thing like an idea document, opportunity document. I'll test the waters out on change. Hey, what do you think if I streamline this process? Because that's what I did oftentimes. I came from the business side, even though I ran projects a lot. But and so I'd say, well, God, this process can be streamlined. And, right now it's taking a lot longer. Maybe there's some risk, and we can overcome the hurdle of risk. And so I'm always trying to come up with ideas to make what I think make life better, but I probably am a bane and a thorn in people's sides because it's like, oh, here we go again, now another change. But getting buy-in, getting especially buy-in, well, two things, buy-in from the executives, but buy-in from the people who are managing change. What do you think about this change? I'm kind of thinking about wouldn't it help you? Would it make you look, because if people can at least have their 2 cents, they're gonna get buy-in a lot easier. So
That's super insightful. I love that. And then this looks like it will be our last question. What do you do if the resistance to change is very strong about your proposed changes?
I would ask the why. And this isn't what's in it for them, but what are they concerned about around this change? Because if they're resisting, there's something behind that resistance. And is it a fear of control? Is it they thought this was just a dumb idea and won't work? I mean, just being able to hear them out of why they think um, why they're so resistant really, and then you can address it, because just resistance itself you can't address until you know what's underneath that resistance. Why are they resisting? Is it too much change? Is it a fear? Is it loss of face? What is it? So that'll help too, I think.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I think that was our last question. We had a lot of awesome thank yous and great presentations in the chat. So thank you all so much for your feedback. Really, really appreciate it. And again, if you need any more info on this topic, please do not be afraid to visit us at watermarklearning.com. And if you missed out on any part of this session, we will be sharing a recording with all of you in an email after the webinar, and I'll look into see if we can get some slides for you for our audience for sure. So
Yeah, and if you can, Mariella, maybe just add when you're sending out the email the next Agile Change Agent too, because that might be. I know some people were interested in that as well.
will do. Thank you so much, actually, for all.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck on your next change journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you again, Susan, for all your awesome insight.
You're
Thanks again.
welcome. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Bye, everyone.